So a few videos ago, I did a little roundup of things that I like for my aquarium that people don't really ever talk about, but I have found to be really useful. So I thought it's time to do it for the houseplant hoard too. So let me show you some things that are not typically considered exclusive to houseplants or for houseplants, but have become huge. I hate the word game changers, but let's use game changers for me keeping all of my plants alive. So first up, Target is like the unsung hero of super awesome non-plant plant stuff. Starting with these trays. These are Bright Room stackable trays. They're about 12 by 12, I think, and I don't know, like 10 bucks each. Now, what I really like them for is for semi-hydroponics. If you don't know what that is, it's basically switching out soil for leca, pumice, minerals, that kind of stuff. Basically turning the plant from a terrestrial plant into a somewhat, aquatic's not the right word, but my brain is dying. So semi-aquatic. So let me show you how that works. Now, this is like that. And you can see the water line, which is super valuable for someone like me who has inattentive ADHD and can't remember to ever set a schedule. Not that a schedule is good, as we talked about in my plant myths, but I digress. Now, one thing you might be wondering about if you are a plant nerd is that, what about algae? Because it's clear, it's transparent, sunlight can get through. Knock on wood, I haven't had any algae issues yet. I've had trays like that for about 6 to 8 months, and so far so good. As someone who has to deal with algae in her aquariums, I understand it's a hassle, but like I said, I haven't had that kind of problem yet. Now, speaking of Target, another thing that I love is these types of bins with lids. So these come in 3 different sizes, and this one is $3. I think the other ones are maybe like $4 or $5. They're all relatively cheap. What I love them for is the smaller ones hold my rehab plants, cuttings and things that I really need to keep alive or that I'm trying to rehab. I also love it for this, which is all moss. And this is how I will grow begonias or anything that can regenerate itself from fallen leaves. Or if I want to test, like this lipstick plant clearly isn't working the way I want it to, but this one too. We'll take that one out. Put it in the compost heap. So the small ones are great for that. The medium-sized ones are better for larger plants that you want to keep in a humidity environment. If you don't have a plant cabinet and you have alocasias or something that really needs lots of humidity and you want to make sure that it is happy, those medium ones are really good for that. The large ones are too, but what I also like the large ones for is storing moss. And that is just great for if you need to do propagation really quickly or you're trying to save a plant or something like that. Having the moss just ready to go right in there, oh, it's clutch. Next, we're gonna have to look above, and that is a curtain rod. Originally, it went across this way for my previous YouTube setup, but this is the back wall that was behind me, and this is going to be turned into a door this year. So like the whole, it's a whole thing. Just take my word for it. I had to switch the office around to make that work. And so consequently, I had to switch up my YouTube setup thing, whatever. So I had that and I was like, I feel like it's really useful. I can find out how to use it for something. And so I was like, oh, hanging plants, duh. Now, this is in the stud, or in the joist, I should say. So it's like, I can't reach it, but take my word for it, it's pretty sturdy. However, I have a purple heart tradescantia that is in a hanging basket, and during the spring and every time but winter, it is outside. However, it is really freaking heavy, and I don't 100% trust those screws. So for a lipstick plant and a syngonium, they'll do just fine. These are pretty light plants. But for that tradescantia, I don't know, dude. I think I'm just paranoid, but I'd rather just err on the side of caution. You know what I mean? Next, grid wall. Grids. As I showed you in the grid wall build for climbing plants, these are just grid panels from those, like, you know, shoe cubes, those stackable cubes. All I did was affix them to the wall and adding just these, which are shelves for slat walls. As you can see, my climbing plants are super happy about it. And those aren't the only climbing plants, but the ones that got picked for this are pretty happy about it. Next, this is a cafeteria tray. And I love those because they're really good at acting like a giant drip tray for multiple plants. Also, I can transport plants really easily on those trays, but for even just in the cabinets, super clutch. And they're super cheap too. Next, 5-gallon beverage jar. Now, my typical setup 3 seasons out of the year is rainwater. I go out to the backyard for my rainwater barrel, fill that up, bring it back in. Winter, it's a little bit more complicated. I'll actually use aquarium water instead, and that's a whole freaking thing. But no kidding, for my 250 some plants, I think we're at like 253 right now, it takes about 4 gallons to cover all of them. So going back and forth 4 times, even with my gallon water jug outside, when it's not very easy to get outside because the door's not built yet, it's a whole thing. So rather, I use that 5-gallon beverage container. However, with this one, I will say, okay, so I used to have a 2-gallon one and that cracked just after 6 years or something like that. So I got this big one. My only complaint with it is this lid is super big, super wide for Megan's apparently very tiny hands. And when this was closed tightly, it was just really hard for me to get off with one hand. I had to use 2. I accidentally cracked it, as you can see. So the blessing in disguise is that that has made it way easier to unscrew that lid. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Next, this one we'll get into more when I talk about my plant cabinets, but USB fans are awesome. USB fans are great for plant cabinets or even the IKEA greenhouses that are supposed to be sealed up for humidity, but all of that humidity really gets to be kind of, and you need to have air circulation. So these little fans are so great. I think they come in like a pack of 6 or something. They're pretty cheap. They are USB, take my word for it, I guess. And they are just so awesome. I really, really, really love them. And I just hang them up with magnetic hooks like so. Absolutely recommend them. If you have any sort of enclosure that you're trying to keep your plants happy in, you need to keep airflow going. Okay, next, you're just gonna have to forgive the chaos that this is right now, but dish tubs for taking a bunch of stuff outside that needs to be cleaned, or if you need to take multiple plants out that need to be repotted or something like that, it's just great to have everything all together instead of trying to take it out all by piecemeal. And having a dedicated dish bin, as you can see, like me, you just fill it up full of stuff and eventually get around to cleaning it out. Next, deli containers, soup, takeout, whatever you want to call them. What these are great for is if you have special soil blends that you're making, if you have fluval stratum and perlite like I use. Not only these are good for storage of specialty items, they're also really good for semi-hydroponics. Let me show you. Take this guy out of my plant cabinet. So this is a philodendron billy. The normal semi-hydroponic cups that I have for sale on Etsy are great, but they're small, right? So when these things outgrow them, I need to find a way to keep them alive and happy, but I don't have giant semi-hydroponic pots. So I use something like this. Fits right in there perfectly. The billy's happy. I'm happy. Since this is in a plant cabinet, I have not yet had any issues with algae. If I did, I'd probably just like put some duct tape on it or something, maybe washi tape or something like that. If you're doing semi-hydroponics, or even if you want to have a double pot, takeout cups, takeout bowl, whatever these are, awesome. Put him back in there. That's where he lives. Next, and you already saw them over there, but I'm still going to give you a little bit more of a breakdown, and that is plastic shot glasses, plastic sauce cups. If you are doing propagating, if you are doing corms, if you're doing anything really small and you don't want to spend a whole lot on like those really tiny those little things, plastic shot glasses and those sauce cups are awesome. They're super cheap. You can get hundreds of them for like 20 bucks, maybe even less. I don't remember. I've had them forever. And they are just so versatile. You can reuse them. You can slice the bottom if you need some drainage. It's just absolutely recommend them, especially if you're going to do a lot of propagating. Speaking of propagation, test tubes are my favorite for propagating. These work so well for little tiny propagations that need support, but you don't want to use like a mason jar or anything like that. And you can also see here another thing, my microfiber gloves. These are awesome for dusting. Dusting the house, I don't know. I meant more dusting plants. As I talked about in the common myths, plant gets the CO2 from openings in the leaves called stomata. CO2 gets pulled in through the stomata pushed under the cuticle to the mesophyll layer, mixed with the light energy, water, and turned into glucose. The stoma on leaves can get clogged with dust, and that can hurt photosynthesis, making it really difficult for the plant to survive, so you need to dust your plants. Rather than trying to dust every plant with a paper towel, I just put those gloves on. I can hit up the top and the bottom of the leaf easy, and then that way I can also I haven't had this problem yet. Maybe it's because I do this method, but if I ever had like aphids or scale or something like that, getting under the leaf with those gloves would help me knock those guys out, and that's always clutch. Next, I don't think it's a big secret, but I'll include it just because it's not typically plant related, but should be. And that is mason jars. Mason jars are awesome for bigger propagations. I figure you probably already know that. Next, aquariums. My aquariums are my favorite thing in the world for keeping plants alive. I can use them for hydroponic setups for certain plants. I can use the water in them for nutrient-rich water for my plants. Now, obviously, I'm not recommending you go out and buy a 30-gallon fish tank. Just keep your plants alive. But if you need a new place to put plants, or you have the issue where you don't want to use tap water and getting rainwater during winter or something like that is a little too difficult, these things are amazing. And you can see there, this one is actually way overfilled. That's where snails live that end up getting fed to my pea puffers. Next, and this one was more of a discovery after necessity rather than planning ahead. Washi tape. Washi tape and Sharpies. Now, granted, some washi tape is pretty cheap, and so getting it wet is a little bit of a problem, but if you want to label anything, I love using it on like plant labels because, let's face it, not every plant makes it. And so I used to do the thing where I would just write on one side of it and then scratch that out when the plant died, use it again on the other side, but then I still have to eventually get rid of it and buy more. So rather than do that, what I do is cover the plant labels in washi tape, write on that, and then if these die, I could just peel that washi tape off, reuse the plant label, save myself the agony of having to try and find yet another way to remember all of my plants. And I'd say last, but certainly not least, because I love them so much, are microfiber bath mats. I got these on AliExpress and I just love them. They're so dorky, but they're my dorky, you know? They all go in front of my plant cabinets just in case anything goes wrong or I spill water, because I always spill water. Microfiber mats are awesome. They will soak up water very quickly. They're not expensive. You can get them super cheap. I've recommended them for my aquariums too, especially in case my paranoia where it's just like, oh my God, someday one of those are gonna crack and 30 gallons of water is gonna go everywhere. At least the bath mats would soak that up a little bit. Okay, there's one more that I want to include that's kind of like, aquarium lights are also clutch for when you want to light up an area that wouldn't normally have lights. So I will show you two ways that I have them. I have this one, and I know, isn't that sad, under shelves for the grid wall, and I also have one down here where the rehab is. Let's see if you can see it. Lights designed for aquariums with plants are full spectrum. Some of them come with timers, some of them don't. It's up to you which one you want to get. I have both. I haven't really found a big difference because I can just set them on like cheap ass GE timers. They're totally fine. So yeah, that is my not plant essentials. Next up, we're going to cover the 3 ways that I have created plant cabinets, but that's for another video. So I will see you over there.